Hey, you weirdos, it's me, Dan.
And Jake. I don't know why I had to think about that for a second.
Yeah, and I guess it's Jake.
Yep.
So I'm back in studio today, but it's windy as all fuck, so it may sound like I'm blowing a gale.
This, of course, is the One Foot in the Grave podcast, where we invite you to stare into the abyss. And when the abyss stares back into you, the abyss will say, "Man, what the fuck is wrong with that person?" Who listens to this shit?
Yeah, who does listen to this?
How many do we have?
Over 250.
Hey!
But
thanks,
what's
guys.
really crazy is, like, you know how I post kind of like random stuff on Instagram and Facebook?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, well, the last one was a fictional listener named Jeremy who said that we were the best podcast that he's ever listened to. And then underneath it says, Jeremy, first time podcast listener. And it's had like so many likes on Instagram. And I don't want to deceive the people. It was me. I am Jeremy.
I can solve that mystery for you right now. I thought, out of the interest of whether you would notice, I boosted that post.
No, this is on. Did you boost it on Instagram?
No, on Facebook, but I assume that.
No, it's only got 2 on Facebook, but it's got 275 or something on Insta.
It is the best podcast I'm currently a part of.
The #1 true crime and paranormal podcast that we make.
Yep.
We're also on Twitter now. So believe it or not, our Twitter handle is True
Trump.
Crime.
Donald Trump at Donald Trump.
POTUS1.
Yeah. So
No.
if you're looking for any of our random
my
thoughts,
soul! You should. The wind here is ridiculous.
I heard it.
There was like a little mini tornado just in front of my studio caravan.
Gotta love Australia. Tornadoes, spiders that kill you, stinks.
Yeah. Oh, and also I'm looking at the horses out my studio caravan window.
Yeah.
And yesterday, Aaron and I were doing their teeth, which...
With the toothbrush.
Yeah, just with a little tiny toothbrush. No, you have to grind down their teeth and shit. It's fucking weird.
Ooh.
But they're
Like
really,
rodents?
really, really old. Yeah, well, they have
Whoa,
Hypsodont.
sorry. I ate some beef
They've got
jerky right
Hypsodont.
before I started.
Oh, that was a burp? Oh, gross. I thought you were slurping something out of a straw.
My esophagus was a direct hole to my stomach, and you were hearing the bubbles of my sparkling water just frothing in the beef jerky.
Not pretty. No. Well,
Sorry.
anyway, we were doing the horse's teeth, and I was
Yeah.
holding the horse's head up because we sedate them. And this whole tooth just fell out of her mouth. It's about the size of my thumb, actually two of my thumb. And it's just, it was pretty gross. I was like, I guess that
now.
No, it just happens as they get older. We just have to make sure
Like
that
people.
the tooth above it doesn't start to grow down. Yeah.
Have you ever had... I always used to have these weird dreams about my teeth falling out all the time. Am I the only one who has that?
No, everyone has those.
In my dreams, there's all like this, I don't know, this fluid in my teeth, and they just keep falling out. They're all rotten underneath.
Yeah, no, my tooth one is, they're broken. They're all broken in my mouth.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever broken any?
I've chipped a few.
Yeah,
But
broken,
I've never...
as you know, my front teeth by swimming along the bottom of a pool with my mouth open like an idiot.
Like a fucking blowfish.
Like a dev.
They don't know this. The weirdos don't know the dev.
Well, we were trying to think of a politically correct way of saying deviant moron. So we just went with dev.
Dev. For developmentally challenged.
Yeah.
And the way that I just said developmentally, I sounded like a dev.
We don't say it to be mean. It's not.
No,
it's only in reference to ourselves.
Yeah, or others who are devs.
That's so bad.
It's also very true.
Yeah, I mean, be proud of it. Own it if you're a dev. We do.
Yeah.
And we
So,
likely are.
So hopefully some of our weirdos listened to what we requested last week and shared the podcast with a friend. I think we've had a few extra listeners. The earlier episodes, I think, were pretty shit. And now we're actually finding...
you know what? They were quite fun. They were quite fun, but they were short, and we were doing them in a bit of a hurry because you were in Canada for a short time, and we were just trying to record as many as we could to fill a gap, right?
Well, we want to get on new and noteworthy in one or both of Canada and Australia's iTunes stores. So
you know what? A lot of our listeners are in Mexico.
Well, Jake, that's because you've put the Facebook thing to go to Mexico.
Well, I just thought because of the Santa Maria, all that stuff, I thought they would be into this. So,
well, look,
also, I thought someday if you and I went on a tour, I would like to go.
I'm not going to
Cancun
Mexico
and Japan.
No. Oh.
So that's where I advertised. We go to Cancun for margaritas and then Japan for skiing.
I think it was Air Japan just had a mistake on their listings, and they were giving trans-Pacific flights in business class for $600, and I think it was supposed to be either $6,000 or $60,000.
Oh god!
And they're honoring it.
Well,
so
the Japanese understand honor.
Yeah,
in Canada, if that happened, they'd be like, "Oh, our bad. We can't refund your money." That's
sorry. Yeah, $600 for
you
nothing.
should have known better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, apparently the CEO of the company had to put a sword through his stomach.
That's horrendous.
But
what's that called?
That,
what was that called? Is it Harry Carey?
Bonsai?
No, no, that's a tree. Harry. I think it's Harry Carey.
I don't think they would say Harry Carey.
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
Halle Calais?
We do have Japanese listeners, and I apologize to all three of you. I'm sorry. This was inappropriate.
They know they have an accent. It would be like me making fun of a Canadian accent, which I don't.
You kind of don't have any. You have an accent of no country anymore.
No country for old men.
Yeah, because you were Canadian. Now you're Australian. But you're like you speak like the ING Direct guy. That used to be a bank. Now it's owned by somebody else. But he used to, he had this accent that was just this vague, fake European accent. So people would
was
be
that
like,
the guy with the long hair, Billy Connolly?
No idea. No. He has a funny accent too. But no, it was just a commercial.
Because I was like, he's clearly Scottish. Like, no, come the ING Direct.
Yeah. I don't think you would. I don't think you'd want a Scottish banker. There's something about them that just makes you think they'll make fun of you. No, it was like save your money. It was like a fake. Like it was a bit of Swedish, a bit of Swiss,
basically
a little bit of.
It was a higher pitched James Earl Jones.
It was a fake European accent. The guy was probably from Bronx or something. Harry Carey, a common misspelling and mispronunciation of the Japanese method of ritual suicide, seppuku, also known as harakiri.
Harakiri.
So I was calling it Harry Carey. That'd be a good name for a band. Harry Carey and the swords.
Okay, here's a dark thought. Do you think that's where Hello Kitty came from?
Holy shit. Maybe.
They're like, let's make something that sounds good, but it's actually bad.
And you know the way that cat waves, it's kind of like it's drawing a sword down towards the abdomen. Ritual disembowelment. Teach it while they're young.
Hello Kitty.
Hello Kitty. Harry Carey. Yeah. Anywho. Okay. Well.
Ruh-roh. The thing is that we did get some feedback from maybe a weirdo. I don't think that he'd actually like to be called.
I don't think he liked
like a listener.
our podcast. Yeah.
Or us, but I don't care. Anyway, he said that he thought it was okay to listen to in fast forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of me chewing my food, chewing my cud. It's a slow pace. We're from the Maritimes. It's a slower pace of life here.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to listen to me chew.
So
anyway.
who are you talking about today?
Oh, I got a good one, but just a second. You might want to edit this out because I got to do another of those burps.
Why don't you just put it on mute and then, too late. You know, there's this really handy button just there on the studio thing, and you can mute your voice.
Well, you know what?
So
we have been very vocal. We've been very vocal for people with inflammatory bowel issues or just irritable bowel. And, I'm just going to burp into the mic.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, but the reason it's embarrassing is because people don't want to listen to it. Yeah, shame on you. Shame on you.
The good thing is you're in Australia, and the listeners, you're at home. So there's no chance of me blowing it in your face.
Gross. But I when you had that real slurper one just before,
the broiler, I call that.
I felt like I could smell the hot meat coming out of your mouth. It was just. Let's move on. Moving on. Who are you talking about? You're going first today.
This is interesting. No, it probably isn't going to be. I had this idea.
Buckle up, people, because this is the best.
Prepare for a wild ride. You know how? Okay, I like true crime. I love true crime. I've enjoyed the supernatural stuff quite a bit, and I got to talk about two things. The first. I'm also a musician, and I love music. And I remember this guy. I got really into punk music back in college, and this guy was already dead before I got into it. His name's G.G. Allen, and basically he didn't commit any murders, but this to me is sort of the story of somebody who was born to be either a mass murderer or a serial killer. But somehow redirected that energy into making frankly terrible music and being a performance artist. I guess you would call him that. But anyway, should I go ahead?
Not a murderer. Well, I don't know now because it sounds kind of like you're going to tell us a story about a boring guy.
Okay, I've written extensive notes. So G.G. Allen.
Let me guess. G.G. Allen, musician. The end.
Did not a ghost.
Didn't murder and wasn't killed.
Yeah. Okay, so you may have heard of this guy. As I'm going to tell you the story, this may come up that you remember it. But anyway, he had this wild childhood. He probably is genetically prone to being insane because his father was clearly insane. And, born Jesus Christ Allen because his father felt that he was the second coming of Christ.
Of course.
And his brother Merle couldn't say Jesus Christ, so he called him Gigi, and that's how he got the name G.G. Allen.
Oh, that's nice.
My notes state that father...
A biblical name.
Biblical name. I think... I think there was a Jesus in there somewhere. I know there was a Moses. Anyway, his father was, I wrote, crazy asshole who threatened family with murder and used to dig graves and tell his family that's where he would put them.
Nice.
So eventually the mother left the father and renamed him Kevin something or other. Kevin Allen. Kevin Michael Allen. But he just went by Gigi as his stage name. So, but his parents liked music, so he got into music at a young age. And didn't do very well in school. Failed grade 3, was put in special ed classes. Managed to get through, but was very unusual during school. He started, this is the early 80s. He started late 70s, early 80s. Actually, this is early 70s when he was in school. He was cross-dressing going to high school because he liked the band, the New York Dolls. And at his brother Merle's wedding, he was both the best man and the maid of honor. Yeah, he married his high school sweetheart, Sandra Farrow, and they later got divorced. He was in a bunch of bands, and at first they were kind of rock bands. They played Aerosmith covers and stuff. But then he got more and more into punk music and then really hardcore punk music. And he was from New Hampshire and would play in clubs in Boston, like because punk was kind of still up and coming, and you had to go to the big cities to really get the scene. But Boston didn't really give a shit about them because, he was from New Hampshire, and there's a bit of snobbery when you're in music. So he made up for that by increasing the craziness of his stage antics. So he kind of acted really out of control. He would take his dick out in clubs and stuff, and they kept throwing him out of the clubs that he was playing in. And in 1985, for the first time, he pooped on stage.
Wow.
Yeah, and then jumped in it and smeared it all over himself. And so as part of his performance, and the guys who were with him, this was a planned event. The guy I was watching the documentary, and the guy said what he did wrong was that he took the X-Lax way too early. For the first 3 songs, you could tell he was really holding it.
Oh man.
And he was really uncomfortable.
Oh no.
So that band was called the Jabbers.
Not great.
Well, he's crossed the line from performance art to psychosis, I believe. But this is all, is it to get a reaction? He says he wants to make rock and roll scary again. So his wife left him.
I don't know if it was ever that scary.
If rock and roll? Well, he liked Alice Cooper, and like Alice Cooper was known back in the day. He had this like wild stage show where they did like a fake beheading and stuff. But it was campy, right? It was just for fun. This sounds a little more intense. So his wife left him, and the band left him. I wouldn't want shit on my music equipment. I got to say, I would have left him as well. And then he released his first solo album called Eat My Fuck. And he said music is about revenge. He started getting really into drugs. And early music was not terrible. I got to say, it kind of got shittier as I assume his psychosis
as he rolled
progressed.
In it. Yeah.
He vowed to kill himself on stage on Halloween.
Good.
First in 1989 and then in 1990. But
call 811 if you're in Canada.
His stage antics had gotten so wild that he was sexually assaulting women in his audience. He was beating the shit out of people in the audience. Oh, pardon me. There's another one.
Oh.
And he would like smash himself in the head over and over again with a microphone until his head was like freely bleeding, and then he'd be covered in shit at the same time and throwing his shit covered body at members of the audience. Anyway,
hard pass to go to one of his fucking concerts.
Don't go to those shows. Now he threatened to kill himself twice, but was in jail for both those Halloweens. And which is good because many of the band members strongly suspected that he would take a lot of people with him. They thought this isn't just going to be a suicide; it's going to be a mass murder event.
Right.
He was quoted as saying, "My body is a machine gun. The audience is my target." And he just got increasingly depraved. I mean, it starts with jumping around with your dick out, but then getting into pooping on the stage and stuff.
It's progressed pretty quickly.
Yeah, he's escalated. If we were talking about a serial killer, this would be marked escalation. So now he's shitting, rolling in it, bleeding everywhere. Every show is ending after 2 songs when the club's pulling the power and stuff. At one point, he went to jail for 18 months for abusing an obsessed fan. And when he came out of jail, he was increasingly violent and focused. The themes of his music were misogyny, pedophilia, blasphemy, racism. But my suspicion is that in some weird way, he still was considering himself an artist, and he just wanted to shock people. Like I don't think he was
like
really...
Marilyn Manson, but with poop.
Now he did have a teenage girlfriend in his 30s, right? So he's a bit of a pedophile too, but I don't know if teenage means like 19 versus 16. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of information because he wasn't that good. but
Yeah.
he was the weirdest person in rock and roll. Anyway, so he was a big fan of Hank Williams Jr. and considered himself a kindred spirit to Hank Williams, and he started writing country songs, which I listened to while I was researching this. They're not great, but some of them aren't that bad. I was surprised that it was the same guy.
I guess comparatively.
Yeah. He was a big time murderino. Now pre-podcast days, but he was a huge fan of serial killers. He wrote to and visited on multiple occasions John Wayne Gacy in prison, and Gacy painted a portrait of him. Yeah, Gacy painted a portrait of him that they used for his album cover.
Nice.
Hated G.G. Allen and the Murder Junkies.
Nice.
And it's a cool portrait, but I was listening to My Favorite Murder, and they said that Gacy didn't actually paint all those paintings of the clowns. He got like an assembly line of people to do it to make money. Anyway,
right.
So he would go on tour, and the tours had to frequently be stopped briefly for broken bones, multiple episodes of septicemia, where you get blood poisoning,
fuck off,
and physical trauma. What was happening, I assume, is that this guy was not carrying around a alcohol swab to wipe the shit off his arm before putting heroin in the vein. There's
and
a Todd.
Also,
do you know who Todd Phillips
with
is?
the microphone.
Yeah. Well, exactly. He's covered in shit and he's opening his skin up.
Who's going to these concerts? Like, who's like?
There's a lot of footage. If you have a strong stomach, watch some footage from the concerts on YouTube. I mean, the music's at that point terrible. Like, you can't hear a goddamn thing. It's just somebody screaming. A couple of songs have like anthemic, like the crowd shouting too and stuff, and they sound okay, but not great. I would say, our band that I play in tries for the opposite thing, where the music sounds really good, and we probably sound equally shitty. So it's hard to know how shitty he is versus somebody's just recording on a camcorder from 1985. But what strikes me the most is that most of his shows only have about 5 people in the audience. And that doesn't surprise me. They're just whoever happened to be there, and
got stuck.
He would start playing. He would start playing, and people would run out of the club. So he would empty the club as soon as he started playing.
Who hires this guy? Like, who's like, let's get him to play.
But listen, he was on like Sally Jesse Raphael, and he was on who was the Geraldo had him as a guest. Anyway.
What a fucking dream come true for this idiot. Yeah.
Well, people, I don't know, they gave him the attention, and it's almost like this toxin, right? It just he's already gone this far. How does he go further to get more attention, right? Gross. Anyway, when he was Todd Phillips, the movie producer, he made the Fish movie, and he was in he might have directed Old School with Will Ferrell. You know that one?
Yeah, never heard of him, but I'm sure I know the movies.
Yeah. He plays bit parts in all those movies. Anyway, he's like the kind of college comedy guy, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he made a movie about him called Hated, G.G. Allen and the Murder Junkies. Anyway, and one of the guys in his band, I believe, is his brother Merle. So when he was arrested, he had the psych assessment. They diagnosed him as having narcissistic, borderline, and masochistic personality disorder.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know a few people that also share that.
But most of them don't shit all over themselves in public.
No, it's kind of the opposite. They're so, yeah. Anyway,
he did get a girl pregnant, the teenager he was dating, and anyway, the girl, I won't say the girl's name, but she almost immediately in life distanced herself from her parents. She was born in 86. He stated that if he wasn't a performer, he would be a serial killer or a mass murderer. And I gotta say, he does a lot of things just to be shocking. But when you watch the documentary on this guy, he's probably telling the truth. He is way out there. So this brings us to his death, which is why I wanted to add him as a feature guy on the show. So June 27th, 93, he was in Manhattan in a club called the Gas Station. As usual, the venue cut power during the second song. So
Of course.
After he emptied the club, and there were about 10 or 11 people who stayed because they, misery loves company, and these people were fans. He trashed the club, then walked around the neighborhood naked, covered in blood and feces, with a group of fans.
With a group of fans.
Yeah, there are a few of them. There's a video of this happening. It's so bizarre. And he's got a weird little penis. Anyway, side note. So after storming around, they get in a cab. Can you imagine the poor cab driver having to clean that out? And they went to his friend Johnny Puke's house. These are the punk names. Johnny Puke. And he just was like... wanting to keep partying, I guess. He'd been taking cocaine all morning. So when they got there, he started taking heroin. And at some point in the night, he passed out and they found him dead the next morning. 36 years old. But the funeral in Littleton, New Hampshire, was pretty interesting. So according to his wishes, he did not want his body to be washed. So he was still covered in shit. Or preserved in any way, but he wanted it to be on display. So he was bloated and rotting, turning black, and was dressed in a black leather jacket and jockstrap. He had a bottle of Jim Beam in the casket, and fans were pouring it in his mouth and sticking pills down his dead throat during the funeral.
The fuck?
Yeah, it turned into a bit of a party. I feel a little bad for the mother. Just, at the end of the funeral, Merle put headphones on him and played the Suicide Sessions, which is, I guess, something they recorded. Nice. And then his grave, where he's buried, was so frequently vandalized with urine, feces, cigarette butts, and alcohol that they had to remove the headstone.
Oh my gosh.
And his mother, Arletta, discourages this behavior. Anyway, so gosh. That is, it's not true crime and it's not supernatural, but it is the weirdest fucking person. He was so weird, and I forget what I was going to say, but it was just that, he wanted to be a serial killer, but well, he said he would have been if he hadn't been a performance artist. And then when you think of some of these serial killers, to them, is it like a performance art? Are they leaving art behind, right? Is it their way of leaving their mark on the world? And maybe we should just tell them to smear themselves in shit and
roll around the stage.
Roll around a stage screaming into a microphone. Just get it out of your system, man.
Oh my gosh. This guy sounds... You know what? I think I like my guy that I'm going to talk to you about today more than I like the guy that you just talked about who didn't kill anybody.
I've got one last point on this. To research this guy, I listened to a lot of his music, and it's 90% fucking terrible. But I still put forward that the guitar solo from Janis Joplin's Piece of My Heart is the shittiest thing ever recorded. Even after this whole day of listening, that every time I hear it, it just makes me feel like it's hitting a note that just makes my prostate go into spasm or something. I don't know what it is. Anyway, G.G. Allen, there you go. I don't hate the guy. I just think he was probably psychotic, and people were calling it art because it was the era and punk music was big.
Well, Marilyn Manson does the same stuff, but he doesn't shit on stage.
No, he's a shock rocker, but he still wants to get laid. This guy, I don't think would have given a shit if he got laid. I think he was...
And I think Marilyn Manson was in a lot of... He's now in a lot of TV shows, I think.
Do you remember there was there was a rumor that he had played Paul on The Wonder Years?
Yes, yeah, and that he removed a rib so he could suck his own dick.
You don't have to remove a rib. You just need a long dick.
You just need a bigger dick.
Just take some of those pills they're always trying to sell you on your email.
Yeah, exactly.
4 inches in a week.
Oh my gosh. It would touch the ground. Have you heard that joke? This guy finds a magic mirror on the wall or on the back of the door, and he says, "Mirror, mirror on the door, make my penis touch the floor," and his legs fall off.
In the airport in St. John, they have these urinals in the bathroom that go all the way down to the floor.
Yeah.
I was sitting there with Dad. We both had to pee before we got on a plane. This was about 5 years ago. And he stood up to the urinal, and then he goes, "Whoo!" and jumped back. I said, "What?" He goes, "They keep that porcelain cold."
Oh, gross. Oh. That's like a nightmare for me. I'm like the biggest germaphobe. So the idea of this guy of yours fucking dancing around in shit, and then the absolute horror of my dick touching a urinal, I could not. It's beyond what I can handle.
Is Elijah old enough that he tries to pee in the big urinals? Because
no.
When Jack was just at the wrong height, like he was, he would rest his pecker on the porcelain, and I caught him doing it. And I said, "Dude, you're gonna get herpes."
Oh, like, fuck! No, that is the worst. I can't handle that.
Yeah, he was doing it. And he's probably done it 500 times.
Oh, jeez. He's probably got herpes. Fucking. He's the next fucking
Typhoid Mary.
Patient zero. Yeah. Shit.
Yeah, Typhoid Larry.
Oh, gross. All right. Well,
who's your guy?
I'm gonna do Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, dude. Classic.
He is a classic, and you know what? I've done like quite a bit of research on Dahmer. I've watched a bunch of documentaries and stuff on him and his
The Cannibal
Stone
Next Door.
Phillips.
Is that what it was called?
No, but Stone Phillips interviewed him as well. And he's like the serial killer with a heart of gold.
Great guy. Unless
I can see why people would kind of
I'll go watch The Exorcist with you.
Yeah, but like, well, so going through his murders, like he really was a very typical, like, this is my MO and I'm going to stick with it kind of guy. So I probably just sort of name a few in the dates, but I'm not going to go into it because it gets very repetitive.
Because he did a lot of murdering.
Yeah, 17.
He wasn't. Yeah. He got away with it
murder,
for a long time.
And dismemberment of 17 men and boys from 1978 to 1991.
I don't want to break the ending, but somebody got away, didn't he? A little kid.
Well,
not
kind
little,
of,
but a teenager.
Yeah, kind of, but not really. So I'll start because that's the last or second to last one. So all of his murders involved necrophilia. Some of them involved cannibalism, and he preserved a lot of the body parts. The other thing that I watched, and it's just on YouTube, is My Friend Dahmer. So that kind of goes through. It's like a properly produced movie, it's actually pretty good.
He was in my era. He was the serial killer. When I think of a serial killer, I think of Jeffrey Dahmer before anyone else.
Well, Ted Bundy too. I think
he was too young for Ted Bundy, but Dahmer was I understood what they were talking about. Yeah,
but I think because we were alive for these ones, you don't hear much about serial killers now. Certainly not ones that are so ritualistic and stuff like that.
I think DNA has. They've had to either move out of North America or they're so sneaky that we don't know they're serial killers.
Well, yeah, true. What are you doing there?
Just adjusting my shitty chair. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So he preserved a lot of the body parts, and most, if not all, of the skeletons. So he was born on May 21st, 1960. And he died November 28th, 1994. So he was 34 years old when he died. Guess what? He had mummy issues. And when the stuff that I can find, she sounds like a real fucking see you next Tuesday. So she would work herself into states of anxiety over trivial matters, which sounds very much like you and I. And she tried to kill herself with Equinil pills, which is a carbamate type drug, but she didn't end up killing herself. When Jeff was 4, he had a double hernia repair. And before the surgery, he was a happy, normal kid. And after the surgery, he was quite subdued.
So brain injury of some kind.
Well, I think
hypoxic on the table, or they intubated one lung and not the other. Or
yeah, and what's really kind of strange is that, like, when my son hurt his lip and stuff, they needed to give him an anesthetic. It wasn't like a full general anesthetic like this, but they were like... Yeah, they were like, there can be some sequelae. They didn't say that the side effects include, mass murdering, crazy...
necrophilia. Necrophilia. He may have a headache. He may have some tremors. He may commit necrophilia. So if you're okay with that, we'd like to go ahead and suture his lip.
I think he needs that done, And of course we said, yes, he can't be ugly.
Side effects include headache, dry mouth, necrophilia, dizziness.
All of this information is from Wikipedia, by the way, so I'll try to break it down slow. Break it down for you. Yeah.
Every time one of us says it.
Here's a story about a guy named Dahmer. You probably don't know him. He wasn't a farmer. I don't know.
That was terrible. We're not freestyle. This is not 8 Mile.
He's mouthing the penis. It's not on the body.
I'm not sure where you're going.
I was going nowhere.
It's a meat dildo. There was a meat dildo.
God. All right. So when he was a kid, he started to collect roadkill. He'd dismember them and kept them in jars. That was the first red flag for me.
That's a sign.
One time,
did his mother catch him?
No, but his dad, I think his dad stopped it from continuing, but not before he managed to decapitate a dog and nail the body to a tree.
Jeff,
so
we're going to have to talk about these animals.
Yeah,
I can't imagine how the conversation goes. We're having the roadkill discussion now.
Oh, Dad. This is the same age that you and I were singing in Rotary Boys. Once he reached puberty, he discovered that he was gay. I don't think we've got the rights to that. So,
Hans Christian Andersen is gonna be pissed.
He's gonna come back to get us.
That would be ghostly. That would be.
By 1985, he started going to bathhouses, and what he would do, he would drug other men and have them unconscious, and he would sort of lay down next to their unconscious bodies and just listen to their hearts and to their guts gurgling and stuff like that.
He was infatuated.
Yeah. And in June 1978, so 3 weeks after his graduation was when he committed his first murder, and he picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen.
From high school?
Yeah, from high school. Oh, so he was only 18. Yeah. So he picked up Stephen Hicks, who was also 18, and took him home to his parents' house. He got the guy really drunk, and when Stephen said that he wanted to leave, Jeffrey clubbed him to death and strangled him with a dumbbell. So that was the first murder weapon. And then
did he have anger issues, or was it? Yeah. Okay.
No. No. I think he was all of his is fetish. Very sexually driven. So yes, he then dismembered the body, wrapped the body in plastic, and buried it in the backyard of his parents' house. Later on, no, he didn't eat that one. Later on, he dug it up, smashed all the bones with a sledgehammer, and sprinkled them across like the wooded ravine in his backyard. he had removed the flesh from the bones and dissolved it in acid and flushed it down the toilet. Like, what the fuck?
Fuck, he was scientifically pretty
I mean,
advanced compared to your...
his father was a chemist, so I guess he had access to acid and stuff like that.
And
but
an
still,
interest.
But how
he had an interest in biology, the human body, chemistry.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that guy in Cell, the movie. You remember that guy?
I haven't seen that.
It was fucking weirdo.
Oh, that was weird. That was when I was a kid that came out.
Yeah.
But this was before Breaking Bad. So how the fuck did he know to flush it down the fucking toilet? It's crazy.
Well, where do you get the chemical? I mean, obviously it's going to be some kind of like, oh shit, hydrosulfuric acid or something. But I mean, I don't know how. Like, all that stuff really stinks, right?
Yeah.
But, how do you get away with it
to that
without your parents catching it?
Well, his parents weren't home, so I think his mother and father had broken up, and then he was at the house by himself. Okay. So that's when he kind of did this one. So in 1979, his father has convinced him to join the U.S. Army, and he trained as a medical specialist. And then he was on July 13th, 1979, he was stationed in Brumholder, West Germany, and he served as a medic. During that time, 2 soldiers said that they were raped by him. One was raped repeatedly over a 17-month period, and the other was drugged and raped in a personnel carrier.
How did he get away with it? You said you liked this guy? It seems like he's pretty fucked up.
Well, you'll see why I like him. Well, I don't like him. Don't get me wrong.
No.
He's not. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. I don't want to glorify Jeffrey Dahmer.
But in March 1981, he was deemed unsuitable for military service because he was like an alcoholic, basically. And they gave him an honorable discharge. So then he didn't want to tell his parents that he had been discharged from the army, so he moved to Miami, Florida. The second murder happened on November 20th, 1987. The victim's name is Stephen Tuomi, and he was 25 years old. Dahmer claims that he didn't intend to kill him, just his normal drug and rape MO. So he would drug him with sleeping pills in alcohol, and then when they were unconscious, rape them.
Okay.
But he woke up to find that he was on top of Stephen, and Stephen was dead and basically beaten to death. So how do you dispose of a body this time? Because he was in a hotel for this one. He put the body in a large suitcase and took it to his grandmother's house, who he was then living with. So 1 week later, he severed the head, arms and legs, and filleted the flesh off the bones, placed inside garbage bags, put the bones in a sheet and pounded them into splinters with a sledgehammer, and then he put everything in the rubbish except for the head. So then with the head, he boiled the head to get the skull. And
to shrink it down for a necklace. Very fast.
He used to use it to masturbate with, and eventually it became too brittle. So he pulverized it and disposed of it the same way.
That's super fucked up. He looks like Dexter, though, don't you think?
A little bit. I think it's the haircut.
Yeah.
Then on the 14th of January 1988, James Dockstader was a male prostitute. He was only 14 years old. Jeff lured him to, I think, his grandmother's house for $50 to pose nude for photos.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one.
He strangled him on the cellar floor and disposed of the body a week later, same as the last one. So getting rid of all the flesh and stuff like that. Then on March 24th, 1988, was Richard Guerrero. He was 22.
He's starting to get closer and closer together, is he?
Yeah, they are.
So he figured out he likes killing people.
Yeah. So he lured him to the grandmother's house, drugged him, and strangled him with a leather strap. Then he claims he performed oral sex on the corpse, and then within 24 hours, the corpse was disposed of in the normal way. On March 25th, 1989, so a year later, was Anthony Sears. He was 24 years old. He wasn't planning on the murder, but was approached before the bar closed. So Anthony Sears came up to him before the bar closed, and he went back to the grandmother's house. They had oral sex, and then he strangled him. He thought Sears was very attractive, so he disposed of the body in the usual way, but kept the head and genitals in a jar of acetone. And then this was the first time that he started to sort of keep pieces of his victims. So that was the fifth. That was the fifth victim. In 1990, he moved out of his grandmother's house, and in May 1990, he killed Raymond Smith, who was 32 years old, and he drugged him after luring him into his new apartment, manually strangled him, took Polaroids of the body, boiled the arms, legs, and pelvis, and dissolved the rest of the skeleton except for the head in acid. And then he spray painted the skull and kept it next to Sears's skull. Yeah. So then number 7 was in June 1990. Edward Smith was 27 years old. He drugged and strangled him as per usual. So I think the thing that made me start to think, oh, well, there's clearly something there's something very wrong with him. But he didn't, when he was eventually trialed for this, he didn't get insanity. They didn't take the insanity plea or whatever.
Right.
But I think that he was clearly insane. The stuff that
I don't
he was
think
doing,
you can do this stuff without being insane.
No, exactly. And he drugged them all. So when he killed them, they were all unconscious. So that's the thing that I thought was a little bit kind of gentle.
Yeah. He's. I'll tell you, the definition of insanity for the law is premeditation, right? So it wouldn't fit his defense. He knew what he was doing.
Yes. Well, and
it's not
that's
a defense,
what they've said.
But he is clearly psychotic.
Yeah,
normal people don't kill people.
He does have, I don't know what they've said that he had, but he did have some mental disorders, but he understood the difference between right and wrong. And I think that that's what the insanity plea is that when you're insane, you don't understand that what you're doing is wrong. But
right.
he clearly understood that what he was doing was wrong.
Like G.G. Allen covering himself in shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't get that that's wrong. He thinks it's just shocking and it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. He was probably fucking crazy.
Great to scare people with your own shit. No. It's a health hazard.
Guy, he placed the skeleton in his freezer for several months in hopes that he would be able to keep the skull from becoming brittle like it had previously, but it didn't. So he did the whole acid thing. He tried drying the skull in the oven, but it exploded. And when he was interviewed, he said that this is one of his biggest regrets because he really loved this guy, and he felt bad about it that he couldn't keep this part of him for himself. So then number 8 was either in August or September 1990 by a guy named Ernest Miller. He gave him a drink with only 2 sleeping pills and then slashed his carotid. So he didn't have enough sleeping pills to really knock the guy out. But so when he was dismembering the body for Edward Ernest Miller, he kept kissing the head, and he kept the heart, biceps, and leg meat in the fridge so he could eat it. So this is the first time that I think that he started to eat parts of his victims, or at least
in a way, it's just that same thing that we were just talking about. It's the escalation, right? How do I?
Yeah, well, I think it's because he's tried all these other ways of keeping parts of them. And what he said in the interview was he wanted so desperately to keep these people with him forever that he thought if he ate some of the victim that they would stay with him in one way or another. So then he got rid of the rest of the body the same as his normal MO. Then the 9th victim was on September 24th, 1990, and that was David Thomas. I don't think it's David Thomas from Wendy's. He was 22 years old, drugged him, then decided that he was not a very attractive man. So he just strangled and dismembered the body, and he didn't keep anything. So, yeah, he didn't like that one. Number 10
insult.
wasn't...
You're not attractive enough for the guy who's killing you.
And fucking dead things. You're so ugly that you won't fuck him dead.
He'd rather fuck a head that's in his fridge.
Yes. So in February 1991, Curtis Strahler, same MO. And then number 11 was April 7th, 1991. Errol Lindsay, who was 19, he was lured to the apartment, drugged. This time he tried to make basically like a sex slave or a rudimentary lobotomy victim. So he drilled a hole in his skull and poured hydrochloric acid in there. But what surprised him was that Lindsay then woke up, said, "I have a headache," and he drugged him again and then strangled him. Same as similar.
I'm sorry, he drilled a hole in his skull and poured hydrochloric acid in it?
Yeah, and the fucking guy woke up. So
that would wake you up.
And said, "I have a headache." So, yeah, I don't know how he survived that, but yeah. So
Didn't survive for long.
Same disposal for that one. And then
Poor
number
guy.
12 was Tony Hughes, same MO. And then number 13 was a kid named Korarak, and I cannot say this last name, but it's Syntha Some Phone. So
Okay.
just, I sound like fucking Homer Simpson when I say that. But anyway, this kid was 14 years old. Konarak is the name. He drilled into the skull, put acid into the frontal lobe, left him to get some more beer because he was drinking when he did all these murders. Konarak left the apartment and someone called 911 as he was wandering around naked. Dahmer came back to find him and 3 women talking on the stairs. And the cops arrived, and Dahmer told the cops that it was his 19-year-old boyfriend who was drunk. And the police led them back into the apartment and put it down as a domestic. Dahmer, to prove to the police that he was his lover, Dahmer showed them Polaroids of him and Konarak in his underwear to prove that they were lovers, and the police bought it. So after the cops left, he injected more acid, which then killed Konarak.
Oh, you mean he was doing this, injecting acid in their heads to all these people?
No, just these ones that just the ones that I'm talking about.
That's fucking crazy.
It is crazy.
Terrible way to kill somebody. So the guy was confused because his head was full of hydrochloric acid.
Yes.
And it was eating his brain.
Yes.
That's
also
disgusting.
he had been drugged. So he's drugged, from what I can tell, he drugged all of them so they were unconscious when all of this happened.
Oh, man. What a fucked up way to go.
He kept both the skulls of the 12th and 13th victims. Then number 14 was on June 30th, 1991, Matt Turner, the normal MO. Number 15 was July 5th, Jeremiah Weinberg, who was 23. This time instead, because the hydrochloric acid failed the last time, he injected boiling water that put Jeremiah into a coma for 2 days, and then eventually he died.
What an asshole. I don't like Jeffrey Dahmer. I think that's the fucking worst thing you could do to somebody.
I know. So
So, a little background. I just spent all fucking evening pulling a clod out of some other guy's head just to save his brain, and this dickhole is putting fucking acid and hot water in people's heads. Fuck you.
Well, what happened was I did this research over 2 days. So the first ones I was like, okay, so this is clearly like a depraved human who has like a psychological issue, and just wants, like, he wants to have these people all to himself, basically, and it keeps failing. And then I started to get down to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, and I was like, no, this guy's a shit-hat.
He's a shit-hat.
Yeah. So I think number 4, though, I still think BTK is the worst.
Yeah. He's a shit-hat on the Pol Pot level.
Yeah. So number 16 was on July 15th, and that was Oliver Lacey. He was 24, same MO. I don't think he injected anything into this guy. I think he's given that up now. And then July 19th was the last one, and it was Joseph Braidhoft, and he was strangled, left for 2 days, and then disposed of in the normal sort of MO way. So in July 22nd, 1991, he tried to drug and kill Tracy Edwards, but that guy escaped and flagged down 2 cops. When they went to the apartment, he had cuffed Tracy Edwards just on one hand, and he was there for like 5 hours or something like that, and he eventually managed to escape while Jeffrey had a lapse in concentration. The cops went up to the apartment, and Jeff said that the key for the handcuffs was in the top drawer of his bedside table, and the cops stumbled upon these Polaroids of all these dismembered bodies, and also found a head in the fridge that was recently severed of an African-American man.
They were mostly African-American, were they?
Yeah, but he said that he didn't have any preference to race. It was just
where he lived, and that's...
Yeah.
It was in the neighborhood.
So when they searched the apartment, they found 4 severed heads, 7 skulls, blood drippings in the fridge, 2 human hearts, a portion of an arm muscle, an entire torso, bags of human organs in the freezer, flesh stuck to ice on the bottom of the freezer, 2 entire skeletons, a pair of hands, 2 preserved penises, a mummified scalp, and in the 57-gallon drum that he kept, he had 3 torsos dissolving in acid. And they also found 74 Polaroid pictures of dismemberment of the body. So they,
Nice.
he admitted to the murders, basically.
It was, well, the first guy fell off a ladder, and,
Yeah.
Is that, I wondered what happened with the refrigerator repair guy.
So, on November 28th, 1994, he was bludgeoned to death in prison by another prisoner. But before...
Did they ever say what that was over? Was it just the other prisoner was creeped out by him, or did he try to lure another guy into his cell?
Well, it was... There was 3 of them in total, and they were walking from the gym to the shower room or something like that. I can't remember. And the guy killed both the other inmates.
Oh, he killed two other.
Yeah, so I'm not
Dahmer
sure.
and somebody else.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was over or anything like that. But yeah, dead.
Good
I guess
riddance.
the other reason why this guy talks like Jeffrey Dahmer talks like he's not crazy, and I think that that's just why he got away with so much for so long, because you'd think that someone who was doing these like unspeakable things would be fucking crazy to talk to.
Don't you think, though, that we all have at least 2 people inside us? I mean, not in a literal sense, but like I have the guy I am at work who I try to be calm and I try not to...
Oh, yeah, totally.
Stop. And then when I'm home and my guard is down, I am a completely different person. Sometimes I'm just cursing and swearing and red in the face, and I would not do that at work.
No, exactly.
And it was like G.G. Allen, same thing. Like he was a lunatic on stage, but off stage, pretty normal, calm guy, and like signing stuff for his fans, and traveling around the country and listening to country music, and so I wonder if that's what it's like for Dahmer. He can be totally normal in court, or Ted Bundy, right? Charming, even like nice guy,
like super nice. Like when I see these interviews, and he seems remorseful, which is another thing that was different to other serial killers. Like BTK was gloating over these things, and Jeffrey Dahmer was like, "Look, I know that this was wrong. Like I feel terrible about it, but these urges, I just couldn't control them." Yeah. So I feel like he was like truly mentally ill.
Yeah, I think just that other part of him could take over, and it was a frenzy, murder, sex part.
Yeah, like
his id was too strong. And his ego couldn't control it.
Like
it's too soon to really talk about it, but the guy there was just a mass shooting in Fredericton, and the guy who did the shooting had tweeted about the last mass shooting. We talk about New Brunswick being like Castle Rock, Maine. The last mass shooting in New Brunswick, and he tweeted, don't publish the shooter's name. This should be about the officers. Show some respect. And he just killed 2 police officers and 2 other people. So these people are like the normal part of them, I don't think it's crazy. I think it is normal. But the crazy part is fucked up. And
yeah, it's crazy. But that, like,
crazy.
You and I are able to sort of, like, when we do put our guard down or whatever, and that other personality comes out, it's not something that we're like, oh, I'm so angry, people. I'm going to go kill people.
No.
It's just, but, like, this guy just didn't, it's crazy. Like, he's got to be crazy, right? Like,
well, you can't cut up bodies and fuck human heads that aren't attached to the rest of the human without
not be crazy. And that's why I don't understand, like, how they dismissed the insanity plea, because, like, yeah, he knew that it was wrong, but he was still fucking crazy. Like, I don't know.
Well, there was another guy. Was it Ed Gaines? Ed Gain?
I don't know.
So there was another guy who had a kind of, it was a little bit similar to Dahmer. We should do him in a different episode because I know we're getting short on time. But he only killed a few people, potentially his mother. He confessed to killing 2 people, but he dug up a lot of graves and dismembered the bodies and skinned them and used the skin to decorate his house. And
Ick.
like, he had, like, female pelvises that he used as sex toys.
No.
But he was also, like, nobody had any idea. Really, really strange dude. The Butcher of Plainfield, they called him. Anyway.
Yeah.
But Dahmer was kind of like him, but he was in the 50s.
No, I don't know if it was Jeffrey Dahmer or not, but one of the things that they was against him for that insanity plea is that when he was doing these necrophilia acts, he was wearing a condom. Was that him?
I can't remember.
I can't remember too. I was 8.
Yeah, I think that was Dahmer. But you know what? It was in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, and he was picking up mostly homosexual men, right?
Yeah.
So he probably did. That probably is Dahmer.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Jeffrey Dahmer. Completely fucked up.
Want to hear really weird? Never mind. I forgot what I was going to say. But that was
sound? Want to hear a really weird sound?
Me. Want to hear a weird sound? Yeah, that was a good one. That was, I mean, that's the quintessential,
No, that's what I think. I need to find out who Son of Sam is, and I need to do that one, I think, in the coming episodes.
I'd like to do Zodiac, too, because I'm sure they're going to find, I bet while we're doing this podcast, they catch it who the person was, because
I was just
listening to a Forensic Files. I was just listening to a Forensic Files when they did, like this season of the podcast. I'm sure in the next few days they're going to find But I was listening to a Forensic Files where they did get DNA from a stamp, from somebody who licked a stamp, and they matched it to the person who had received the letter. So this lady had been sending her self-threatening letters. Anyway, I have a feeling they're going to be able to match Zodiac to at least
they've just started taking DNA samples from them, but most of them don't actually contain
DNA.
Any DNA.
I guess you can do it with just water, right? You don't have to lick the stamp.
Exactly, yeah. And
but would he have thought of that back in the time before they were testing?
Oh yeah, who knows? Yeah, who knows?
I have a feeling he's going to be a cop, or it's going to be like the Golden State Killer. He's
maybe
he's going to be an ex-cop or something like that. Just a guess.
Well, Weirdos.
Just a hunch. Oh, I got a cryptic corner. A real weird one.
Yeah,
super weird. I think I sent you the YouTube video. So, you get into the YouTube spot.
Oh, yeah.
This was the middle of the night.
Weird.
It came up. I know. Okay. It came up on my YouTube feed, and for a second, I was like, "Holy fuck, no way!" So what it is, there's this alchemical society, alchemy, where it used to be turning lead into gold, but now it's like doing impossible science experiments. And have you know what a homunculus is, right? Like,
No.
there are two things. So in medical training, the homunculus is the drawing of a person that represents like how much of your brain is dedicated to that sensory organ. So it's got like huge hands, huge lips, huge tongue, big eyes, small nose, like little tiny torso and big feet. Anyway, but that's the old term homunculus used to refer to the theory that in a sperm, because they could see sperm on a microscope, but that was all the power they had after Van Leeuwenhoek or whoever invented the microscope. They had a theory that there was a little tiny, fully developed man inside the tip of the sperm, and it needed the egg to turn into a person. So that was the homunculus, was the little thing. Anyway, and we had this. There were all these theories about animal molecules. Do you remember? Science history. Anyway, so this guy on YouTube, this is the craziest shit I'd ever seen. And it was 2 a.m. Give me a break. But is this Russian dude, takes his own sperm and injects it into a fresh chicken egg to fertilize the egg. And then cracks open the egg like a month later or whatever, and pours out the contents, and there's this like tubular thing with a tongue that looks around, and he does it 3 or 4 times, and one of them turns out to look like a starfish with an eye in it, and the eye can follow his movement. He has to keep them in jars of fluid on the desk, and he calls them homunculus, and one of them spits at him and he squishes it with a book. It is the weirdest shit on YouTube. It is definitely the weirdest shit. Now, you know that human sperm with 23 chromosomes, because it's not your full complement, it's only half, is not going to match up with a chicken DNA with 40 however many base pairs, and you're not going to make match pairs, and you're not going to make a cell that can divide. But it took me about 20 minutes of really thinking about it to think, yeah, you would think there's no way that a person could impregnate a chicken egg, right? But I had to actually go back through my scientific knowledge and like bring it back up from undergrad and stuff. The videos are wild. They are so creepy.
It's
and
gross.
He's done a great job. He did a great job with the special effects, because it is.
Yeah, it's not like the pig humans from South Park.
It bothered me looking at it. Yeah, pig and elephant DNA just won't splice. Anyway, so check out the homunculus on YouTube. And
it was gross.
That was my cryptic corner. Hilarious.
Nice. Weirdos, find us on onefootinthegrave.podcast.weebly.com. And send us your email. Send us an email at onefootinthegravepodcast@gmail.com.
Send us your social insurance number and your Visa number.
You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and now Twitter. One Foot in the Grave
Donald
Podcast. No, at Twitter we're True Crime Bros.
Oh, really? That's good.
Yeah,
at True Crime Bros. I don't use Twitter. I don't know how it works.
I don't either. I actually had to Google how to Twitter.
And now we're twits.
It seems to just not work for me ever. So anyway, and share this podcast with a friend. Thanks so much for listening.
Yep. See ya.
Okay, bye.
Bye.